everyone, and welcome to our Accenture Technology Vision 2020 webcast. We're so glad to have you here with us. This is the fourth year that Mark and I have hosted this webcast, and we always have a lot of fun. We call it Technology Vision TV, and we're always excited to share the trends with you. So different this year, we are coming to you from the south of France, which is a great place to be in general, but especially for our Sophia Antipolis Innovation Hub. And this is a place where we have a lot of different organizations, and it's really a hotbed of innovation, one of our global hotspots around the world. My name is Elise Corneal. I lead innovation marketing for Accenture, and that includes getting to work on this fantastic tech vision every year. And I'm with Mark Carrel-Billard, who will introduce himself and tell you a little bit about what he does.
Hello, everyone. Very happy to be with you and to be with Elise today in Sophia Antipolis. And I lead technology innovation globally for Accenture. And that's really exciting to be with you today.
Well, we're glad to have you here, and we're particularly excited to change things up a little bit. I mean, we in general like to do that anyway. But we wanted to bring you to the Sophia Antipolis Innovation Hub because we wanted to not only talk about the trends, we wanted to show you how they come to life and give you a sense for how they're embodied. A lot of the comments that we get every year are, okay, that sounds great in theory, but what does that really look like? Give me some examples. We're going to give you some examples. We're going to talk about how this plays out in the real world. We're going to talk about what this may mean more broadly for not only business and enterprises, but what this means for the workforce and what that means for the skills that you may want to grow, the skills you want to grow in others, and what that means for things including the future of work and the future broadly of society. So one of the interesting things here today that we're excited about is that we're celebrating several anniversaries.
Okay.
20th anniversary of the Technology Vision in 2020, which is pretty cool. We're also celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Internet. The birth of the Internet was 50 years ago. At the same time, it was the birth of Earth Day, and these two things might not seem correlated, but as Mark and I get into this, I think you'll see.
And the World Wide Web, 30 years as well?
30 years ago, yeah.
Can you
30
imagine
years
that?
ago was the World Wide Web.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, and so we've got the foundation that is the Internet and the World Wide Web, which has become the foundation of digital commerce, very much, as Mark would say, a digital thread throughout our lives in lots of ways. And then we also have a growing need to really think about that impact of technology on us and on society, and that's one of the things we're going to talk about today. So before we get into that, let's get focused on some of the more tactical housekeeping items, right? And I get to do these because Mark hates doing these. So first of all, let's look on the webcast console, and I want to highlight a few features here so you guys can engage with us and find the assets you need, right? So right above the video window, you are going to see an option to toggle back and forth between Mark and I and the resources. If we're looking, little too animated, you can go look at the resources, read the report. We have lots of different stuff out there. You'll also be including some links of stuff we'll reference, right? So you may hear some things that you may not have learned about before, whether it be augmented reality or some detail on quantum computing. You're going to find that there as well. Also, at the bottom, submit questions. And if you've tuned in before, we pepper in questions throughout our discussion, and we'll also have some at the end. So keep those questions coming. Let us know what you're thinking. We also got quite a few in advance of the webcast, so we're going to be doing those as well. So with that, Mark, shall we get started?
Let's get started. I'm excited about it. Okay.
All right, cool. So, all right, this year's theme, always love the big reveal of themes, right? Last year we talked about the post-digital era. As you like to say, in 2013, we said every business is a digital business, right?
Okay.
Since then, we've talked a lot about, people.
Yes.
And one of the interesting things about our technology vision is it's increasingly become about people. This is deliberate, and this is what we think it should be. So I'll let you reveal the big insights for this year.
Thank you. No, I think so. The theme, and I think last year was all about post-digital. We continue on this post-digital journey, but today we want to reveal the theme. And so the theme is we, the post-digital people, and the idea is how we explore this new era. And that's going to be really exciting because, the whole discussing is that technology promises.
Yeah.
It's like, and you and I mean, you live in Silicon Valley.
Yep.
I've been living there for 6 years. I got already hyped and excited about technology.
It's going to save the world.
That's save the world, and everyone's got really excited about these things. But today, today, now, this is where technology needs really to explore and to deliver something that has been expected by customers. It's like, and there's a lot of hype and a lot of expectation from customers. But the problem, Elise, what we need to realize is that many of industries or businesses, corporations and everything have delivered a lot of cool product leveraging this technology, this digital transformation they've been using for many years already, but it's still based on old models. Like when I say old models, like technology models, like a lot of legacy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then also like old business models. And it's like nothing has really, really evolved compared to the technologies that have been growing so fast.
So there's it's asynchronous, right?
That's right. So
we're seeing these innovations go, but the businesses aren't keeping pace.
That's right.
And then as consumers, honestly, we're kind of disappointed.
Yeah. So So we hear about techlash, it's like in the press and the media and everything. It's
Right.
like Accenture rather call that like tech clash, like a clash. There's a clashing, it's like between those models, like business and technology models,
Right.
in the old days, that try basically to share, to send basically all those products and services using this new technology, but that doesn't fulfill the promise or the expectations of the consumer.
It kind of holds them back. And so,
yes, it is.
So one of the things we talk about is, this is, like you said, it's a technology vision, but you need to be smart about how you apply that technology to create not only business value, but value for people. And again, we talk about skills as well.
Right.
But also, we can't keep going at this breakneck speed of technology innovation if we don't address those models,
Absolutely.
right? Because eventually, this whole move fast and break things, we know it doesn't work. This decade is about material results.
That's right. And that's going to hinder the progression. So the other topics that we discussed, just like before we started, is I think this all technology vision this year is anchored into a theme that the lab get really excited. I get personally very excited about.
This is his favorite theme.
I know that's my favorite. It's like it. And I call that Industry X.0. And the reason why people says okay, why do you call that Industry X.0? First, this is the concept of building engineering, creating, manufacturing, operating, maintaining, and recycling product and services in the world. And so the reason why we call that Industry X.0, we know that Germans call that 4.0, someone will come 5.0. It's all about the X is for cross industry, because that applies to not only the car industry, the automotive industry, but it applies to refineries. It applies to food processing,
right.
Organ printing, for medicals, right. Use biotechnology, all these different things. So we believe that Industry X.0 is going to be key to the future of this planet and the future of the experience that consumer we're going to have on product and services is going to come to them. And I think what's interesting also for the lab is that it's a good way through this digital thread, and we'll come back to that, and digital twin, to illustrate the combinatorial effect of technology and all the research that the lab is working on. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and this is what's going to be anchored in our post-digital theme, we the post-digital people. So with that, let's dive in. Let's give you a sense of what the Sophia Innovation Hub looks like and learn a little bit more about the trends. So come with us.
Party time. Okay, so we start with the first trend, and the first trend is right behind me, the I in experience, and it's helping people to choose their own adventure. And you know what? I'd like to start with a stat first, Elise. As you know, the old tech vision is very a crowdsourcing approach, how we collect all the trends, and we survey tons of people. This year alone, we surveyed more than 6,000 IT and business executives on what they think about where technology is going.
All around
and I want to start with this stat. 63 of them want technology to accommodate me rather than me accommodating to technology.
So 63%, right?
That's right.
They're saying I don't want to have to do what you want. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So I think what we see here is that we need to rethink completely, and we were talking about the model previously, we need to rethink completely the experience of consumer related to product and services. And when I say rethinking about it is that people want to be in control.
Right.
It's a two-way feedback, That's where they're expecting. I think it's very important to consider what we call customer agency.
Right.
The action you have on product and services, and also respecting the choice you want to make.
Right.
I want to use this virtual assistant rather than this one. Company, I've seen that already. If you look at Sonos, they've announced that their speaker will support every virtual assistant platforms. That's fine. That's great. That's what they need to do. Even Microsoft, it's even accepting to let down a little bit Cortana and says I'm going to do the same for Xbox.
Right.
I'll accept that people interact with Xbox using Google Assistant, or they will use Alexa. I think that's the right things to do.
Well, it's really focused on the customer, right? And so what we've seen in those examples, too, is in one with Microsoft, you might not think that they would partner with Google or Alexa, but they recognize that seamless experience, right? Recognizing what the customer wants, honoring what they want, and making it possible is huge. And then also you touched on a little bit of this idea of I don't want to have to adapt to the machine, right? I want it to adapt to me. And that's what we'll talk about a little bit later on AI, but it also talks about like this idea that personalization hasn't gone far enough, right?
That's right.
We've had lots of personalization tools. We've had recommendation engines, which I know you talked a lot about, and they're not really hitting the mark, and more like they're saying this is what we think you should do, here are what your options are, instead of, as we say in here, letting you choose your own adventure, right? That sense of agency, that sense of control, not only over the experiences, but your data, your identity.
Yeah, I love this example of Netflix. I mean, when they came up with different theories, like the Black Mirror series.
Yeah.
Where now, I mean, it's not about recommendation of which series you'd like to watch, but as part of a series, you are also actors almost, I mean, as part of the series. So you can drive the main actors to decide exactly if he wants to go left, go right, what he has to do, and so forth. So you can influence the end of the series itself. I mean, I think this is something important. And we see that also in the gaming industry.
Sure.
We're going to see that more and more, where you have the destiny of your main character in your hands. I think that's what people want to have today.
I think that's a great point because it really changes the brand experience, right? And it changes your own experience as something that you feel like you are really shaping and controlling versus choosing maybe from options that are suboptimal or being pigeonholed into something that you really don't want to do. And I think that's going to be the future of a lot of brands and experiences.
Yeah, Elise, I think it's important that people during the webcast understand that what we're talking about is not only for a consumer. I think everyone is consumer of product and services, but also we're our own customer when we're worker, employers,
the
like
workplace.
employees and everything. So I think we have a great example with McDonald's, what they've been doing also for their own employees.
I love this one. So this is all about customization and personalization, and we tend to think a lot about, okay, the end customer, as Mark was saying, but we don't think about the employee and the workforce and the associates that are part of driving that experience. So McDonald's had a great idea. They said, you know what, we want to allow locations to change and adapt their menu based upon local conditions. You know, if you live in Dallas, you know, in the United States, it could be snowing one day and it could be nice and warm the next day. And you want to be able to shift that menu accordingly.
That's right.
So they gave the technology, but here's what was different. They didn't just do the technology. They could have done Google Maps and traffic and all kinds of things and done that in an automated or AI fashion. They put their associates at the heart. And the associates get to help determine, and they make those decisions based on literally where they are in the location and the types of patterns they know their customers have. And so really that is at the heart of that I, and that I in this case is the worker.
Fantastic. So we said that we're here because we want to showcase about this experience and things like that.
Why don't we do that?
So exactly, let's do that, and I'm very excited to drive here and to show you some of the things that our labs are doing. So I talked to you about experience and immersive experience. And one thing that we've developed within the lab is that a concept that we call Cortex. And Cortex is a completely different ways to teach people, you know, things that they need to learn. And that applies to different industries. So for example, you could think about an oil and gas worker on a platforms that needs to be taught about how to react to fire alarms on the platforms and how you teach that. So either you can go through books, you can read videos and everything, but most of the time, and if you want this to be stuck in the memory, then you will have to leverage immersive experience. And so we have the chance, and I have to say that probably I have the most interesting job in this company, to work with many partners to provide us with amazing devices. And you see a device here is a multi-purpose and multi-direction treadmill. We call that Omni device. And you see my friend Jeremy here, who is going through a script, a training script about how to react to fire drill in a refinery here. And he has to do a couple of things. So he's leveraging, obviously, you know, like you see virtual reality. So the whole world has been built using 3D scanning. And it's like we have created a Unity world. And he's interacting with this world, interacting in the world in the way he wanted. So he has his own destiny in his hand. He can decide about the different scenarios. And obviously, around that stuff, there's a lot of data analytics that we're doing with capturing data. We have, you don't see that, but we have a bunch of sensors on the suit that he's wearing, and especially on the back. And then we can monitor his heartbeat, his blood pressure, a lot of things that we can do. And with this, we can feel also the level of tension that he has and stress, and then we can react to it. That is very important as well.
That's interesting because this gets into the haptics that we've been researching for a bit, and I know it's a particular passion for you, right, of a different area of immersion, which is all about, and if you will follow it this way and kind of close out this trend a little bit, but the haptics experiment or environment is really interesting because we've talked about immersion with virtual reality, augmented reality, and even in different experiences. Haptics allows you to sense. right?
That's right.
Touch, as you said, you can tell his heart rate, see if he's getting a little bit more stressed. Maybe the training is not as effective as it should be in this case, right?
Absolutely.
And keep a monitoring on that. And you can think of all kinds of different uses for that. So, just wrapping this up, what are the kind of skills? You also lead our extended reality practice, and that has a lot to do with what we've just seen here in experiences. What are the kind of skill sets that people need to look at and grow in their workforces?
Yeah, so I think, we could look at technology skills as well as more like soft skills, and if you look at hard skill like in technology, obviously you're going to see technology like 5G will play a big role,
Sure.
obviously, to relay, rendering of images and glasses and everything connected to some computing on the clouds and everything. So 5G is going to be a big one, obviously. Everything which is related to visualizations, all this technology, VR, AR. But I think also if you think about it, on the soft skill side, it's all about psychology.
Right. Sociology.
That's right.
Customer
Sociology
service, even marketing, right?
And how people behave, how people feel about using this kind of technology and everything. So this is also the type of skills that we need to grow much more. It's like growing empathy, also scripts and all those different things that we're going to have to do.
Because experience is not just technology alone, and it's not your experience of technology, it's with.
Definitely not.
So great. I love that one. Let's head on to trend 2.
All right.
All right, so let's dive into our next trend. And this is all about the dilemma of smart things, which turns out we haven't been very smart about.
This is my favorite trend, by the way.
It's become your favorite. Okay,
yes,
I was betting on another one. We'll get to that one a little bit later.
Okay.
All right, cool. So this is going to be more about the beta burden. Not only the beta burden on us as consumers, and I'm going to throw some stats your way, but also the beta burden on companies and how they manage with that. So let me kick off with some of the insights from our survey, and then I'd love it if you kind of contextualize that.
I'll give you some context.
Perfect. So we did the survey, right, for 7,000-ish, 6,000 people around the world, and we learned that 68% of the companies thinks that their consumers don't mind this beta burden. They don't mind the updates. They relish it. They like the new features. They like the new enhancements. But when you dive into the customers and you ask for their point of view, there's a gap there. Now, 72% are very comfortable with it if it's for security purposes, if it protects their identity, right?
That's
no
right.
more hacking, those types of things. Nobody's going to get in through your smart refrigerator and, attack your home. However, that changes. 47% of them actually, let me get my stat right here, want to buy something that doesn't require constant updates. They find it to be a pain. And I learned from Mark earlier that he checks for updates on all of his devices, I think either weekly or something like that. I only check when they're breaking, and it finally occurs to me that I need to update. But regardless of all that, I find that to be a little bit of a pain. And 46% of people believe that it just makes it worse, all of these kinds of updates. Two sides of the coins, lots going on here. What is your opinion?
So I think that's exactly what we call the beta burden. For tons of people, all these upgrades, bring more issues than anything else. Either you need to reconfigure your environment, it's like, let's say that, for example, Nest is not talking to Google Assistant, but talking to Alexa tomorrow and everything. You're going to have to rewire the processes that you have wired, you have configured initially.
And that's on you as the consumer, right?
That's right. That's on you as a consumer. And most of the time with my mother-in-law, it's on me because during the weekend I need to rewire that things.
That's his weekend job.
That's right.
IT support.
Yeah, but that's exactly what it is. But I think what's interesting to see is that there's a positive side and negative side. Obviously the positive side for people technology savvy is that they have new type of feature that
Sure.
they can have. A good example is Tesla. It's the way they're upgrading feature of the car through pushing more firmware updates.
More seamlessly, though, right?
That's right. Very seamlessly while the car is parked in your garage and everything in the morning. Then you have new features that you're going to leverage. So it's pretty exciting for people. I think that's great. And I think what we see also is that companies are starting to understand that they need to educate people about this beta burden because it's coming. And that it's changing, what's this notion of what we call ownership.
Yeah.
Because people buy a product for what the product is, but tomorrow the product will evolve continuously because it will be connected to the internet, and you'll see basically firmware push to that. We'll talk about that's not the only way to upgrade your product. There's another way to upgrade your product, and we'll discuss that. But I think what we see is that companies are starting basically to test new type of shops. We have beta store or beta shops. I saw a couple of them in San Francisco,
right.
And where you buy a product that is unfinished.
And you know it, right?
And
you
go
in
it.
and you say, okay, this is an experimentation mode. It is going to have all of these updates. If all the features aren't there, I'm going to be part of the feedback loop, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic because not only you're going to have probably a discount on the product because they know it's an unfinished product, so that you can't pay the full price for it.
Sure.
But you build kind of a partnership between your customer and yourself.
Right.
And then you get, as you said, the feedback loop from this is the next feature that I'd like to have. And in fact, people are not buying a product. What they buy is they buy an experience.
Ooh, that's a good point.
And I like that because tell me about Philips. So Philips lighting, what do they do?
This was my favorite example of
there
this
you go.
chapter. We always have different ones. And sometimes it rarely aligns. So Philips, I really like this. It has a circular lighting or a lighting as a service offering that they have now, or service for consumers. And it does a few things. Like one, it's able to dynamically change lighting based on your energy usage, your habits, et cetera. But they also said, all right, for those lights, those physical lights that are no longer compatible with the software that's giving us this adaptability, this agility, send them back to us. We'll recycle them, and we'll create new lights out of it. And that also gets to the sustainability point that we mentioned in the beginning, because I'll say when we first dove into this chapter or this trend a few months ago, I was really feeling not only the beta burden, but the burden of all the waste of all of this hardware.
That's
right. As you toss it, you shouldn't, and you want to recycle it. But I think companies also have that larger responsibility. Now that makes me want to pivot to a different thing that you alluded to earlier, smart materials. Yeah. So this totally changes also the beta burden and how we even think about products.
No, I love it. And I like to ask basically the audience, who would have thought like a few years ago that Accenture would be interested in smart materials or material science and everything?
Can you just give a quick, what is a material, what is a smart material in your mind? Like graphene, or like just a quick example for those who may
this is
not
exactly
know
what we're talking about. So it's like the new property of molecules that we're going to be able to leverage in building new products that will change shape, form based on some variability of the context of the environments and everything. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to do. So today we talk about, in Industry X.0, we talk about the variability of product, and the way we are customizing product or we make them more flexible is through software upgrade. Tomorrow is going to be around material science.
Sure.
So the product will morph, will change based on their environment. I mean, it could be, I give often this example of this bicycle that you can ride, and the frame could change based on your morphology and whether you go uphill or downhill.
Oh, so it's adaptable in
That's
a
right. It's
new
completely
way.
adaptable and everything.
That's awesome. And so lastly, material science we talked about. I know we're doing some stuff in biocomputing. Let's look at the workforce, right? Because this beta burden, as we talked about in other trends, not just about the consumer, not just about the enterprise, it's about the workforce and the skills and the talent and how people are going to engage with this. I mean, this is a brand new field. This is science and technology and actually design in the case that you just gave. So what kind of skills are we looking at here? Like, what do people need to be thinking about and exploring?
I think so one thing that we're started to hire a lot, and you saw like probably through some of the acquisition that Accenture has been doing, is like more designing companies, like designer of products. I mean, what can we do like Altitude, like those companies that we acquired recently. And the whole discussion about is how you design the best product and how you're going to be able to create different type of generation of the product by acting on the software, acting on the product itself and the materials. And as we said, it's like we talk about the fact, and we'll talk about probably the next trends, is that it's all about new type of tools, future of processes, the whole creation of products going to change drastically, but also the experience. I want to say like the experience. It's all about experience at the end.
True.
The experience of the product you're going to get. So
that's what's sticky, right?
That's right.
And that's interesting because this is another one of those examples where there are a lot of business skills here, because we're talking about process re-engineering, but you're talking about new business models. This affects the supply chain. This affects, customer engagement. This affects partners and ecosystems. So a lot of stuff going on here. So you mentioned the next trend. Why don't we go ahead and head over there?
Okay, let's go.
All right. So we're diving into our next trend, which is artificial intelligence and me, or AI and me. And I'm going to play a little cynic here, right?
Okay.
When we first started talking about this trend, I was like, come on, AI. We know what's going on with AI. We've talked about AI in the last several trends. But as we got more into it, I saw the real opportunity here and the tension that's been in play, especially in the workforce for a bit. So what do you observe in the whole AI and me trend and the trend with AI in general?
First of all, I think that people have a hard time to deploy AI at large. And we see that more and more. I think the second thing is that the AI that they try to deploy is, I would say, is like the basic AI type of things, which is more the automation than the collaboration.
Arguably not even AI in some cases. In some cases, yes.
That's right. Yeah. And it's like, because it's like smart macro type of things, I would say, it's like, it's like RPA. But I think there's much more that we could do with intelligent systems and the way that AI has developed over years. It's like, if you think about it, like the progress we made on natural language processing, on machine learning, on the way we're managing knowledge graphs, and we combine all these things together. There's much more that we can do today.
Well, and I don't know if a lot of you know this, actually. Mark wrote several books on AI years ago, so you're actually a little bit of an expert to track this progression, right? So you talked about NLP, you talked about explainable AI. Like, we've gone far, but not far enough is what I'm hearing you say. It really haven't unlocked the potential, and it's not really permeating the enterprise. So since you wrote some of your early books to now, what do we really need to do?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, it's all baked down to a lot of educations also to explain people, I mean, the capabilities that they're going to have. So the idea is really to amplify the people into their activities and not replacing them for what they think they're going to be replaced by robots or intelligent systems. I think that's the first things that we need to think about.
That's the first fear, right?
But also like to tell that people that eventually, I mean, if you look at perspective in the future, I mean, we're talking about Industry X.0, there's this capability of new tools, like new generation tools that we're building that's going to really help them, I mean, to be much more productive in their work, or to really delve into more interesting activities. A good example is that a lot of generative design that we start to see in the manufacturing industry. Yeah. There's an example here that we're leveraging in our labs where you can look at different flavor, others colors and everything, or different type of KPIs to create specific design that's going to be created by the intelligence machine so that you're going to pick only the one that you're interested in, and it's going to help you basically to be much more productive in the way you're working. We think that in automotive industry, a good example is to partner with Autodesk to the generative design of their, famous minibus, like from the one from 1962.
So they're coming out with a new one, and it's going to adapt and shapeshift.
That's right. So I mean, they've been able basically to increase the level of development and productivity, but also like changing radically some design. Like for example, the design of their rim has been much more lightweight and everything. It's like they gain like 20%. We're going to see that more and more, and I think that's what people really need to understand is that is that this AI is here to serve them rather than to replace them. And again, I mean, I think the progress we've made where we're going to see AI systems that are much more adaptive to people. Like I was talking about the progress we made in natural language processing. Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I mean, like today, like a few years ago, we had a rating for systems that could do translation, like real-time translation. And they were like translating as well as a human being translator. Wow. Tomorrow, I mean today, we're looking at new indexes to try to rate the systems as the system has become so good that basically, I mean, they're like off the chart, I mean, to the all the indexes that we were using. That's really cool.
And they're getting more context. And I think the interesting thing here, we have in our Human Plus Machine book that was published a couple of years ago by our CTO, it was all about like this missing middle of skills and gaps that need to be filled, right? And we don't just need people that are brilliant in AI and NLP, right, and computer vision, et cetera. The real unlocking, like you said, the real way that we're going to see the real potential of AI and really become something that each of us benefits from is when humans are teaching the AI, right, ongoing. Yeah. You have these jobs, we call them trainers, sustainers, explainers. And explainable AI is one of the things where we have to tell the machine, context. It's not going to learn that without us. So the idea that they're going to learn, on their own and get it right without us, basically bossing them around, managing them, is false, right?
And I think I like what we just discussed, like the context part of the whole equation here. Right. If you think about the new systems that we're developing, I mean, in our labs in Bangalore, when we look at a lot of context and how we combine knowledge graph, we built basically this assets called AmpliGraph, and that we put like on open source. A little success on that one, but also machine learning. To try to also provide more than just automations, and we're talking about like an advisor, like a virtual assistant for airline, it's like a passenger. If a passenger comes in the plane and talk to a virtual assistant asking if crutches can be admitted in the plane, I mean, a few years ago, probably most of the virtual assistants would have said no based on the policy of the airline.
Yeah.
Today, I think what we expect now for the virtual assistant is that they think a little bit further and they think about, okay, that person has probably mobility problems. So what can we do about it? I mean, can we provide like wheelchair support when the plane's going to be landing? And delivering these kind of services that makes basically the connection and collaboration with the intelligence machine a bit more interesting for consumer.
Yeah, they have to be trained on the context so that they see beyond the task at hand and say, you said, I'm understanding their mobility issues, not just about crutches on this plane. So I think that's a next frontier, and I think that gives a little bit more context on why this is important. So check out more on the trend, and you'll learn quite a bit more and see a lot of potential in a lot of ways that I think each of us can get engaged in. All right, so let's go to our next trend.
All right, so we're going to dive into our next trend, which is actually one of my favorites here, and it's all about robots in the wild. Now, all kinds of different robots. There are the larger ones like we have behind us. There are more digital robots that are inside the enterprise. So why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about what your favorite parts of this trend are and where you think it's going?
Well, first of all, I'm pretty excited about this because we've been working, the labs have been working with robots, but in very confined environment with our clients, like in heavy industry or manufacturer. And so that's a very controlled environment. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff we've been able to do, but those robots are big. They don't move much. There's limited flexibility in what you can do. It's been increasing year after year. But I think what's really cool about IT consumerization is just the fact that we're going to be able to assemble robots. Much cheaper, and we're going to be able to play with them, really playing with them in a very uncontrolled environment. So it's like everywhere in the city with you, in elderly house, whatever, and in absolutely every industry. What's interesting to see is that there was an increase on robotics opportunities and usage in the agriculture industry in last year. They grew 48%.
In agriculture?
That's right.
That's not one you'd think about.
Yeah, because everything is going to be like precision agriculture, sensor everyone. So they're putting all the machines become robots, if you think. And you're right. We said like 2013, every business was a digital business. I kind of said like almost like every companies today is a robotic company, or
whether they know it or not,
or partly. Whether they use robotic process automations like AI type of things, or whether you have like half automated machines and everything that work on their behalf and everything. This is what we see. Look at Amazon, the progress they've done with Scout. Like the bots that is trying to solve the last mile problem, which is okay. So how do you deliver the package for the last miles? And they've developed this whole robots basically that's crawling on the streets and everything. It's very agile and everything. I've seen one. That's pretty good. It's pretty
There's some out here?
Yeah?
Are there some here?
No, Sofia will take some time. So we need to wait like in France. We like to deliver the concept with the postman and everything. But it's coming. I think it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think it changes a lot of the dynamics. It changes the opportunities for businesses. It also expands their enterprise, like you said, way outside the walls, right? So that introduces new opportunities, but also some new considerations. And one of the things that I'm fascinated by is how it's changing how we interact with one another, right?
Yeah.
And how we interact ourselves. You and I were talking about elder care and how, so now even in Japan, right, there are a lot of places where people have either a pet robot or some kind of robot to kind of provide companionship in addition to the voice assistant stuff that you
That's absolutely true. I think, and I want to again go back to this whole IT consumerization, the progress we're making in tools. I remember we discussed this Industry X.0 big theme for the labs and how we can connect basically our tech vision this year to this theme. And you remember I said like the future of tools, future of process, and future of experience. This is here a 3D scanner, which is next to me, is a Leica Geosystem 3D scanner. This is not like a recent generation. That's a generation that's a few years old already. And with this, you can create like what we call point clouds. In the back, you can see a point cloud that we have done on manufacturing equipment. It's I think it must be Air Liquide here. It's something that we've done in 3 days using this typical device. And the way it works is that you have like people that are carrying this device and they plant that in some reference point and they go to different places in the plant, and then they're using this to send laser beams that collects all the XYZ coordinates of the points. You put all the stuff together and you have what we call a point cloud, and that's exactly the 3D model of what we see here. This is exactly what we call the as-is built model, and this is very important because this is how you can make comparison between what was supposed to be designed and built and what has been really built. But what's interesting about IT consumerization is that this is the new model of exactly this machine here. I'm holding here. Much smaller, much smaller that people can carry, and it's assisted with AI, so it can give cues to the person who's going to be using to know exactly where he should point the stuff to make sure that when we're going to do stitching is going to be the best. Yeah. Now, what we see today is that we're seeing companies like Boston Robotics or Anybotics coming up with autonomous robots that are carrying on their head basically this kind of machine. And then what they do is that they are crawling the entire plant for you at night and they're doing the 3D scanning for you.
So a lot easier overnight, a lot more efficient.
Absolutely. And even during the day, I mean, they will do that during the day. Yeah. So eventually the bot will come to you, Elise, and say, pardon, can I snoop around and everything and do my scanning and everything? And that's exactly. So you'll continue working while this guy's going to do scanning.
There'll just be bots surrounding us.
That's right, there'll be bots around us.
Very interesting.
That's right.
Well, one of the things that we found in our research as well is that people are excited about that. Of course, there's some people that are a little bit concerned. But if you think about the tension with this and jobs and skills, there's actually a tremendous demand for robotics type skills.
Oh, yeah.
We have a stat that's since 2017, the job demand for skills for robotics has gone up 121%.
That's right.
So, you think about that next evolution of manufacturing or different mechanical skills, it's moving into the robotics industry. And so I think, what kind of skills, in addition to, you might think of in the hardware side, do people need to think about when they're going to be working with robotics?
There are going to be tons of skills. I mean, we're talking about, like, let's go back to technology skills, like programming skills. I mean, it's like the platform like ROS and everything. They're a very standard platform for programming robots. We'll be using new languages and everything. So we need to learn that. It's pretty exciting for people. Obviously, I mean, we can use abstraction layer and everything to continue programming like Pythons and everything. But I think there's going to be tons of opportunity to program those robots and do something with that, to developing all those platforms. I think the second type of skills that we can see is that, obviously, as you said, the whole notion of cobots, collaboration with bots, is going to be very important. So we need, again, like to get like sociologists, psychologists, and everything to try to understand exactly how the two, like human being and machines, will collaborate with each other and learning from each other. I mean, this is going to be something important. One challenge that I pose to the labbers is the following: is that solving in a collaborative way problems that would be given to a set of bots and human being.
Together.
That's right, together. So they arrive basically in a room, and then they each need to figure out exactly the capability of each individual, whether like it's a one-arm robot, a two-arms robot, what do you do about this? And then from this, I mean, if it's a puzzle and everything, how are you going to solve that together? So there's a bit of discovery, and then there's a strategy to put around these things, and then there's the execution.
I love that, and I think the other thing to think about is if we're learning from the lessons that we've had in previous technology iterations, making sure it's human-centered design, making sure we think about the consequences and the broader implications. So great, love robotics.
Sure.
All right, so we've reached our final trend, end of our Sophia Antipolis tour here. The last trend is all about innovation DNA, and this is one which we've talked about quite a bit. I think it intuitively makes sense, but I think we should just dive in to say not only what are we saying here, but then how. And the how, I think, is really, in this case, the most important thing. So a few things that we know that there is increasingly more investment in innovation.
Yep.
In fact, there's a projection that there'll be exponentially 1.5 times the investment in innovation today that will be happening in 2025. But only 10% of CEOs that we've surveyed really feel like they're getting the right value from their technology investments, their innovation investments. And that's a big gap. We call it an innovation achievement gap, and it has to do with innovation DNA.
I'm worried about that. That means that the whole innovation process, I mean, in the industry worldwide is broken.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, if 10%, that's 90% of money just flying and not making any impact.
Yeah. I know it's hard, and I know, like, visiting many our clients, I mean, we have always this discussion about this culture of innovation. This is not something that you obviously grasp, I mean, it's like overnight. I mean, it's like we had a lab at Accenture for more than 30 years doing applied research. One thing that I remember when I took over like 5 years ago, we always discuss about the application of innovation. I think this is... I think we're relentless about few things that might be of interest to the audience here. First of all is that all research that we're fostering or we're pushing forward needs to be backed up by some business problems, whether it's client problems, whether it's world problems, but we need to make sure that we're not doing this technology or this research in some vacuum. Okay,
yeah,
so
like ivory tower type of stuff that has no application.
Because that would not work. And so we need to be very clear about what's the purpose of this research. And that's one thing. So the second thing I think that's important is that we are relentless about trying it out at scale. And we're lucky because we're in a company with 500,000 people,
right.
500,000 people. So think about cybersecurity. For example, we have 2 labs in cybersecurity, one in Tel Aviv, the other one in Washington, D.C. We're developing a lot of things related to cybersecurity using artificial intelligence, homomorphic encryptions, PPCs, and all this stuff. Often we want to test it out. And so I'm very fortunate because our CIO, the CIO of Accenture, is a very good friend. And it helps me basically to test some of our thinking directly on Accenture organization.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and I think that's fantastic. We have also, I would say, it's like a playground, which is all the workplace of the future of Accenture that is also leveraged by our labs, I mean, to increase the way we're going to teach people things. You know, it's like we were talking about MOOCs, we're talking about immersive learning, I was talking about Cortex, the way we're going to teach people to learn things using extended reality, AR, all these things that our labs are doing. So one sign is that what we say is like applied research, so something very substantial that we can drive at scale. I think the second thing that you need to be is you need to stay visionary and look at other topics or area or field of research that you haven't thought about that. I mean, we're talking about who would have thought that Accenture would start working in the material science, you know, research. 3 years ago, we started to do quantum computing.
Right.
Exciting things
that
because
seemed wild then, right?
we
Now
found I mean, like many use cases we could leverage and everything. I think that you need to have like this kind of two cycles, you know, like one thing that is more like something like really almost mature, you're going to be able to deliver something quickly. Because you get your people really excited about these things, and you can drive it to scale. And the second thing is that you need to be visionary. But at the same time, I think you need to have an incubation stage, an incubation organization that's going to take all the things you've developed and put all the surrounding to drive it to scale. You know, like I meet tons of clients that talk about a lot of proof of technology. They do proof of concept and everything. And I think it's not sufficient. You know, it's like, I know that Accenture has been always known by high performance delivery. Initially, we do like a large stuff, and we love to deliver large things. If you bake innovation into this, or you surround innovation with what makes things scalable, then I think you have a good recipe to drive innovation.
I think that's great. And then it's not only embedded in the culture, but it's embedded in the processes, right?
That's right.
And so another part of this that I found was fascinating this year is thinking not only about when you enterprise or innovation in your as a DNA of your organization, but also of your ecosystem relationships, right? And we've touched on that a few times today, but I think in the future, you know, we said years ago, the company you keep matters, right? You know, it really does. You're not going to get all the innovation internally. You need to have an open ecosystem, maybe sometimes with competitors, right? So you need to even think out of the box about who you're teaming with today and how you're going to build that innovation culture that may extend beyond your enterprise walls.
That's right. You're absolutely right. I mean, it's like there's a good example. Like we've been working with Fujitsu, one of our clients. They've been embracing the whole quantum computing technology. Their approach is a bit different. I mean, if you look at different type of architecture of quantum computing, you have the annealer, you have the aquabatic, you have adiabatic, sorry, you have the trap ions, you have like different type of technology. They've decided to go like more CMOS, which is something that we've known, I mean, for many, many years in the processor industry. The reason why they decided to go through the CMOS is to simulate quantum computing, but to provide a lot of good results and good benefit from this technology without avoiding, I mean, some of the problems inherent to today's quantum computing architecture, which is managing the noise between the different qubits. And so what's interesting is that they have partnered with one of our partners as well, which is called 1Qubit, to build kind of the software development kit on top of their, what they call that, the digital annealer. And what's very interesting is that they've already reached very great benefit and great like results optimization of the logistic, for example, in the manufacturer. But also what they've done is that they kind of hand it over to their clients also to test that out, because they really want to embed or build in a whole ecosystem of people that would be betting on this technology, I mean, to try it out and see what it's going to be.
More of a community-based approach, and then they also have just a open source, or not even open source, but on-premise, right, and then cloud-based.
Yeah.
So I think this one's a very cool one, and there's a lot more to depth to this one, a lot of more examples. But I think the highlights are, really making sure it's embedded in your processes, it's embedded in your culture, it's embedded in your ecosystem, and allowing for that two-track, as you were saying, kind of experimentation, right, while also maturing the whole portfolio of innovation. So I think that there's some good insights there, and certainly it's something that's close to our hearts because it's our day-to-day jobs every day. So thanks for listening to us talk a little bit about innovation today. Enjoyed it.
Thanks very much.
Great. So one of the things we most enjoy about the webcast is hearing from you and hearing some of your questions. So I've got a few here. See how many I can trip Mark up with, and we'll get started. So here's our first question. We get this every year, and I think it's a great question. What makes this year's Technology Vision different from others or even the years past, especially on our 20th anniversary? Now, how do you see it migrating, and what's so different this year? What is the inflection point?
I think it's good to start from 2013. You remember when we say every business was digital business, it was really our Technology Vision at that point was very extremely focused on technology, okay? And then we realized at one point of time is like that people centricity around their technology vision was very important. So around 2016, we started to change a little bit the focus from technology to more people centricity. I think the people first, you remember that was very important. Now what you see is that last year, we talk more about, you know, like still around people, but I think what you see here is that today we're moving into, we talk about value, the value that, you know, like technology is expecting to deliver real value for clients and for your customer and for business. But beside value, we talk about values today and seeing values in the economy, values that people care about. I mean, like we talk about sustainability, we talk about privacy, we talk about ethicals and all these things. I think those values are very important. So I think from value to values, I think that's important. And then that move from just people centricity to organization centricity. So I think we see this evolution from technology to people to organization, and probably what's going to be next.
Yeah, and I think it's about the evolution of what the organization is responsible for. Not enough to do digital transformation. You can't go too far and only think about only people, right? It's the combination thereof and represent their values and how you create business value. So I think it's a big difference. Okay, here's a good one. People talk a lot about data is the future oil, right? Right. It's what we run on now. It's more important than oil. We've also talked about today, that trust is also the currency of the future. I think they're related, right? So I'd love your view on that because I see that they're kind of now they're entwined.
No, I like this discussion because, I mean, obviously, I really believe that data is the order of the future of business. I mean, I think you understand that the tech vision for us was very exciting for us, especially this year when we could plug it or connect it to this big theme of Industry 4.0. That is dear to me. And if you rethink about the whole product lifecycle or service lifecycle, from the time you collaborate the engineering with your customer up to the level of maintaining your product or services and getting all data around this whole digital thread, data is going to be key for everything. It's like for the experience, for the manufacturing, for the design, for the engineering, and so forth. And I mean, it's like when we talk about every business was a digital business in 2013, that's exactly what we meant. It's like behind the scenes, it was all articulated through data. And I think Industry 4.0 is the big storytelling play today. Okay. And we call that eventually precision play with Accenture that we believe is going to tell our people and our clients as well why data is so important and how we can leverage it.
Here's a good one. We're talking about sustainability. Now, this is becoming, especially on the heels of World Economic Forum Davos and other major events, Earth Day. Sustainability is becoming increasingly a big deal. Just look at the news, right, today. So this person would like to know a little bit about the technologies involved in sustainability and what should companies be looking at to not only be doing the right thing but also get some competitive advantage.
I think this is an extremely interesting problem for us and topic. One thing that we're looking at, and I mentioned that we have different labs all over the world. We just opened one lab in Shenzhen.
Right.
For people, they believe that China is extremely polluted country, that cities are extremely polluted and everything. In fact, Shenzhen is probably one of the greenest city in the world.
Oh, that's nice, yeah.
Like UNESCO gave them an award like in 2002, and they pledged that by 2025, most of their taxis that are based on fossil energy and everything will be replaced by electric bus. And so that's pretty amazing when you see what you can do there. And I think what is very interesting for us is to look at different type of platforms for managing this energy. So electric. So eventually, like partners like Envision are a very interesting partner for us because they kind of managing not a single energy, but I mean they can manage a whole grid across different type of energy from hydrogen to electricity to solar to winds and everything. And managing the grid around that stuff, this is something that get us very excited in the labs. And we started basically on this grid concept more than 10 years ago already. And this is really concrete examples that we're looking at. Now, we are in Sofia here. And then a few years ago, we made some partnership with a place, an environment in Aix-en-Provence, which is like an hour, 90 minutes from here. And they're really specialized in hardware startups related to sustainability.
Oh.
And so one thing we've done with them is a really interesting application we try to develop together, which is how you can leverage, like all the power in the battery of cars that eventually electric vehicle cars that you would park in an airport or in a train station and something like that, and you leave for 2 or 3 days and you come back, you take your car. With all this power in the battery, eventually what you could do, you could light up, it's like part of the airport. You could, it's like you could use that for powering a vending machine, stuff like that.
While the car is almost idle.
While this car is parked. Okay, so you're building kind of a contract between yourself, private, and the airport, for example, to use your own battery. And so the way we do that is that we have there's an application that has been developed, and then you say okay, so you can reuse the energy in my battery up to 70%, meaning that in 3 days' time when it come back, I want my battery basically is back to 70% refill. And so during that time, they can do whatever they want with your
You've given them
charge.
the right,
And that's right. And you get you get basically in returns
maybe a rebate or something
rebate,
like that, right?
points and everything that you can leverage. This kind of circular economy also is something that we like. It's pretty exciting for the labs also. So we're not looking at the technology only, but we work also very closely with our Accenture Research organization to work on new business model and how we can apply that.
That's a lot more to come in that space, I think.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your questions. We have had a blast, as always, being with you and sharing our insights from the Tech Vision this year. Please let us know how you feel. What did you think about the Tech Vision this year? You can find it on social media with hashtag TechVision2020. Mark, I really appreciate you having us here in Sofia. It was fun to do it in the south of France.
Always fun to be with you, Elise. And to be that in Sofia. And I think, this year was good. To go around the block. So maybe next year we pick another lab.
Yeah, maybe we'll go to Shenzhen.
Maybe we go to Shenzhen.
Yeah.
There you go.
Maybe we'll do it from there.
And we'll do that again.
Well, again, we'd love to hear from you and get your feedback on the insights, the trends, and engage with you a little bit further. So on behalf of Mark Carrel-Billard and me, Elise Corneille, thanks so much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you very much.